All right, we're going to read a text today called Life in an Iroquois Village. I've always said that wrong until just this week. And Miss McGrath, I've always said life in an Iroquois village, but she told me that it was Iroquois. And so I want to say it the right way. As before we read this text, I have a couple things I want us to look at. I want us to look at some words that you're going to see in the text and maybe a little bit about the text first. So in this slideshow, which is also linked in to your Canvas, we're going to look at a few things. Many groups in the Eastern Woodlands spoke one of the Iroquois languages. They all lived inland away from the coast, mainly in what is now New York and Pennsylvania. So they did not live in the same area as the people we've been talking about previously. So they are inland, and we've been reading about Native Americans that have lived along the coast. Okay. Now, there are some pictures that are linked in for you to look at. And this is a picture of a Native American, an Iroquois longhouse. So if you click on that, then the picture of the longhouse will come up. And I did want you to get to see a longhouse because I think often we visualize teepees, and lots of Native Americans did live in teepees, but this big group of people lived in a longhouse. And look how big it is. Isn't that amazing? Very different than what we might visualize. Okay. Now, there are some words I want us to put in our notebook. And I think I started the last one in social studies because we're reading about history, and so it made me think history. And so I think you put your last words in your social studies notebook, and it's fine to go ahead and put them in social studies because we are reading about history. Now, the first word that I do want us to put is Iroquois. And the definition is right here. So you can stop this video and copy what you need, or you can go back to the slideshow. And that's any member of the North American Indian tribe speaking a language of the Iroquois family. Notably, the Cayuga, Cherokee, Huron, Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Seneca, and Tuscarora. Now, it's so cool that you guys are doing a social studies project right now, and you are reading about several of these tribes. So you may find information in this article that you could add. So here's a picture of a ritual dance by an Iroquois. All right, you're also going to see the word palisade. So you need to write this word in your notebook. The whole village was protected by a palisade, a fence or a fence of logs that's about 20 feet tall. Now, check right here in your text that very often when you find a word that is especially a domain-specific word, like a history word or a science word, that the definition will come right after it, sometimes right before it, and be separated off with commas. So this is a fence of logs for protection. What do you use for protection at your house? Do you have a fence? Do you have a burglar alarm? Do you have some big dogs? We might have different forms of protection. Okay, you're also going to see a game in this text called lacrosse. It's a game using a deerskin ball and a net attached to a stick. And it's on page 5. I bet you have seen lacrosse before. And I want you, when you're reading, to be thinking about what is the focus of lacrosse. Okay, you're also going to see the word wattle. This is not a dance. This is a frame of sticks woven into a wide mesh. It's on page 6. So you're going to see longhouses, but you're also going to see wattles in this text. Okay, so let's go back to our text. Now, we have a question that we have been answering while we've been reading, and it is, what surprises us in this text? And we're going to keep doing that with this text because when we find what surprises us, We then have information that we can explain, we can write about, and we are writing about this information right now. We're also researching it in social studies. So I want us to find surprising information. And I'm going to read a little bit of this to you. And as I'm reading, I'm going to kind of note the surprising information that I see. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to read some of it to you. Many groups in the eastern woodlands spoke one of the Iroquois languages. They all lived inland, away from the coast, mainly in what is now New York and Pennsylvania. Some lived as far north as what is now Canada. For the Iroquois, there was safety in numbers. A village was home to hundreds of people, sometimes as many as 1,000 people. They lived in large structures called longhouses, which were owned by the women living in them. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I think that is very cool information that the women own the longhouses. So I'm going to put an exclamation mark right there. We just looked at that longhouse, and wow, the women own them. A longhouse was about 20 feet wide and 50 to 150 feet long. 20 by 150 feet? That's half the length of a football field. Wow, the size of that. That's amazing to me. As many as 20 families might live in a longhouse. That's amazing to me too. 20 families? We have one family living in my house. If we had 20, that would be just too many. The whole village was protected by a palisade. There's our word from our vocabulary. A fence of logs about 20 feet tall. Outside the palisade, a short distance from the village, were fields where food was grown. Nearby would be a source of water such as a river, stream, lake, or pond. Okay, now this is one of the coolest things about this text, and soon you will get a login so that you can also look at this text. I do want to open up some of these little openings where you see a red circle. You can click on the red circles. Oh, I've got to get rid of my pen first, though. I think if I have the pen, I can't open it. Oh, I cannot get rid of the little pen. Oh, hang on. Maybe right here I can drop my pen. Well, I cannot seem to drop my pen, so I'm going to have to tell you some of these because I've clicked on them before. But up here on the top is a shelf that they can store their canoes. Then right here is an opening in the roof where the smoke is like exhausted out. Now, when it's raining, they can close this. Now down here, there is a sort of like a bunk bed, a place to sleep. And it has a mat that they roll out to sleep on, maybe kind of like a sleeping bag. Then there is a storage shelf up above. Now back here in the back, this is like a closet. And inside of that is a place to store things. Then in the very back of this particular house, there is like a little apartment for one family to stay in. Okay, so while you are reading this text, I want you to continue to just mark, just like I've been doing with an exclamation mark, things that are surprising information to you. We're going to do this one more section together, and then I'm going to leave you to do this, the rest of this yourself or with a family member. A longhouse frame was made of thin young trees that could be easily bent. Tree bark was wrapped over that frame. Oh my goodness, that is a lot like what else we read about? The canoe. So I'm going to have to mark this because they make it similar to a canoe. A door stood at each end, but there were no windows. A center aisle ran the length of the longhouse with families living on either side of it. So just like this side, the other side has families. The two families that lived across from each other shared a cooking fire between them. I thought it was pretty cool that you could cook um, inside of a longhouse without a stove. And smoke escaped through holes in the roof about every 20 feet. Over the door was a carving or painting of an animal. It represented the clan of people who lived in the house. Now, I kind of like that because I think, well, that tells me that all 20 people who lived in that house were part of the same clan. So that's surprising information to me. So today, I do want you to finish, and I want you just to mark up your text with surprising information.